But suppose the instinct still cries out, as it certainly will. Yes, respecting alcohol, I guess I have to depend upon AA, but in all other matters, I must still maintain my independence. Nothing is going to turn me into a non-entity. If I keep on turning my will and my life over to the care of something or somebody else, what will become of me? I'll look like the hole in the donut. This, of course, is the process by which instinct and logic always seek to bolster egotism and so frustrate spiritual development. The trouble is that this kind of thinking takes no real account of the facts, and the facts seem to be these. The more we become willing to depend upon a higher power, the more independent we actually are. Therefore, dependence, as AA's practices it, is really a means of gaining true independence of the spirit. And that's from the 12 by 12 on regards to the third step. All right, Paul, take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. Paul Alcoholic. The way I see it is that's the problem speaking to you as you. Yeah. And the idea of how terrible it's going to be if I lose something, that's speaking from the system itself. So the failed system broadcasts loudly when it gets concerned about its audience moving to another station, so to speak. Yes? That's when it starts playing the golden oldies and has terrible forecasts about what's going to be like and how terrible it would be, like the hole of the donut. How do you know? Yeah. But of course, it believes it knows. So yeah, it's the system, the failed system speaking to us as us. Hopefully the influence of the program and the higher power will override it. And it just goes back to the new employer, old employer. So new employer is going to take care of us being all powerful. Obviously, if there's a new employer, there was an old employer. And that old employer, we know quite well how we were treated under its, how it used us, because that's what happens. To employ something is to use something. So something has used us for quite a while, and now we have a new employer that's going to use us in a completely different way. And it's going to be beneficial to us and to others. So this is all about, the problem talks to us as us. That's why we tend to listen to it. And I think this is a pretty good example of it. It's talking about the instinct, but really it's the selfing speaking. Yeah, and that and the fear of being powerless, which most of us in this meeting have realized is the source of power. It's in the admittance of powerlessness that we access a power that's greater than self, or we access the new employer instead of constantly going back to the old job. So powerlessness, when you admit you're powerless, you don't experience the effects of powerlessness, because the effects of powerlessness is only felt when you try to exert power. That's when you get frustrated and you can't fucking believe no one's doing what you want them to do and it's not working out the way you planned. All of those are frustrations based on a mistake. We think we have power when we don't. Yeah. So I've never really, the change was very obvious. The contrast was hard to miss, which is when I admitted my powerlessness, I felt an incredible sense of power, to tell you the truth. And then I think, what was that last part, Mike? Can you go back to that last part?
Yeah. The trouble is that this kind of thinking takes no real account of the facts, and the facts seem to be just this. The more we became willing to depend upon a higher power, the more independent we actually are. Therefore, dependence, as AA practices, is really a means of gaining true independence of the spirit.
Yeah. Yes. But the system that we have been relying on doesn't think so. It's not in for that. Yeah. In a way, I mean, how many people came into recovery out of virtue? Yeah. You know, we came in because there was no other fucking way. We were on the last square of our multi-dimensional game board, and we were fucked. Yeah. So the activity of being fucked, isn't usually isn't it doesn't go along with the new plan. It has to be sort of put in its place, which is of a lower power. And the small dog wants to act like the big dog until a big dog is introduced. Yeah. And then the small dog rolls over. And so this idea of accessing a higher power is truly the key, because we're under the influence of a lower power, let's call it that. And the influence is rooted in an identification with the lower power. We become identified with the image it has made of us. And through that image, it lives. Yeah. Through that image, it thrives. Through that self-centeredness, it gets to express itself. And unfortunately, it shows itself because it's such an extreme case that it's hard to go unnoticed when you're in the back of a police car and shit like that, or in a hospital once again, or in another rehab or another institution. Something has taken over the wheel and keeps driving you to places you don't want to be. So, I mean, hopefully we have the eyes to see, and we enter the program and we submit ourselves to for our employment to change, really. So, and then through the program and through the community and through the steps and the principles, we get introduced to the new employer. Being all powerful, it's going to take care of us. If we stay close to it and do its works well, you can't be far from everywhere. And to do its works well, who's going to say what that is? You'll find out. And I think the benefits of the new employer are great. There's a lot of vacation time, paid vacation, vacation from the bondage of self. It's a great insurance policy because it works and it's reliable. And you're constantly getting promoted and getting raises. Yeah. And a lot of shit happens that you don't deserve. So that's not a bad deal. So yeah, thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't see any hands up. If you'd like to ask Paul a question on this or anything that has to do with the 12 steps, feel free to raise your hand in the participants row, and we'll get those addressed for you.
If no one has a question, I just want to remind everyone, they've heard it ad nauseum, but everything I say comes from a point of diagnosis concerning the exact nature, not the nature of the wrongs, but yeah, actually it is, but let's call it the exact nature of the wrong. And that's a mental activity, where they say it in the book, the problem resides in the mind, a mental activity that I would call selfing, which is constantly referring and implying and telling us what we are and what we're going to be and what we were. And we've seemed to, it's a very jealous, let's say, radio station. It doesn't allow you to touch the knob and turn to any other station. if you do, its static will override the other station in most cases. Yeah. But not in this case of recovery, which is incredible. Not in this case of recovery. So this identification as something that we're not, and then being told that we're it all day by the head, because the head assumes this this fucking crazy idea. It reinforces it. And I feel like if people talk about why is there so much obsession with self? Well, the only way to keep an identification as self going is obsessing over it. Yeah, it's because basically it's like it's like water and oil. You can't really blend them. Yeah. Yet you can sort of, it's like, so basically you and self are constantly being glued together. There's never really a lasting bond. It has to be applied all day, which is the obsession around self, because it's insane, isn't it? Seriously. I mean, you plan a 3-year trip to Hawaii, and you live in New Jersey, and as soon as you get to Hawaii, all you think about is being in New Jersey. Yeah, it's a fucking insane. Yeah, because it really what it is, its trip always is to be in self. It doesn't care where you're going or where you were. You're going to be pictured there. Yeah, that's its drive. Yeah, its drive is to have you believe you are a self. And basically at that point, the only possibility is, hey, this seems pretty fucking inhospitable and fucking restless and irritable and uncomfortable. I'm going to try to get out of it. Wow, sounds like yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But in this case, it reinforces the problem because we're identified as an idea. And the idea is generating the discomfort. And then it's the idea that says it's going to get out of the discomfort. And I don't know what you believe this term that we use in our community means, but let it land somewhere, which is self can't get out of self. Why did they come to that observation? If it could work, someone would have said, hallelujah, self has finally gotten out of self. But no, they came to a very sober assessment that self can't get out of self. Yes. So maybe that's exactly what's going on right now with you. I don't know. That's the suggestion. It's not like a billboard you drive by. It's a billboard that the message you take with you as you're driving by and see if it applies. Yeah. How did it feel like? Did it feel like that night when you were shooting coke with your compadres and it been on like a 7 or 8 day cocaine retreat? Yeah, it cost a whole lot, man. That was a very costly retreat. Yeah. And then suddenly, after a shot of coke, you ran out, and then you looked around. Basically, you knew no one was going to give you anything. So then you were drawn seemingly to the floor, to the rug, and you started, looking around to see if you had spilt any coke or someone had maybe 4 years ago or whatever. And then you started picking, and then you got on your own, all fours, and started like grazing around the rug. Yeah. Was there a volitional choice in any of that? Billy, did I sign up for that when I went out with my little outfit and thinking I was going to meet a babe and do a little dancing, emoting on the fucking dance floor, get to do some tokes or whatever, shoot some coke in the bathroom? I didn't think I'd end up on a rug taking a piece of lint and really going over it and actually trying to make it cocaine, really. I mean, that's fucking insane. You know what I mean? You could have never imagined that, did you? If, well, you were a kid when you were writing up, oh, what I'm going to be like and where I'm going to live and what it's going to, what my husband and wife is going to look like. Could you, and you'll be fucking rummaging around a rug looking for lint or anything that was sort of white to see if it had any narcotic content. I mean, give me a freaking break. Something has taken us over and it leads us to these places. Let's give, render unto Caesar's what's Caesar's. We're rendering unto the higher power now what is of the higher power. The gratitude of being sober, something has kept me sober, and all the great things that have happened. I give great praise to the higher power. Why not pin the old crimes to the real assailant? Yeah, it was selfing. It was the disease of alcoholism and the underlying disease of addiction to self. Yeah. No, we take all the burden of those past behaviors. We give all the grace, all the credit for the present behaviors to God, but we take all the credit for the past behaviors. Let's give the credit to the past behaviors to that old God. Why not? You've done your amends. You're not trying to skirt responsibility. Let's arrive and ride the wave of responsibility and do what we're supposed to do. And then there's another wave that comes, which is accountability. You see, when you look at your life, you see self's role in it. Yeah. And you render unto self what is self's, and you render unto God what is God. Yes. I think we got it all mixed up. People call me and they're totally burdened by 25 years ago. They've been sober 25 years and they can't enjoy the fruits of recovery because it's like two dogs are just nipping at their heels all day. Remember what you did. Remember what I did. Yes? It's slavery. It's fucking slavery. You can be sober and still enslaved. Yeah. So, yeah, I took responsibility. We've gone over it weeks, how when I was young, and I think most people like this, we have an overly exaggerated sense of responsibility. We're thinking, if I walk in a room and someone yawns, it's because I'm boring. Yes? It's insane, isn't it? So of course you want to get out of that. So let's say there's too much pressure on me. So when I'm bad, no one puts any pressure. So I'm just going to get loaded and fucking become completely irresponsible. Seems like a natural reaction in a dualistic format. And then, all right, I wash up into AA and I realize, Jesus, that didn't fucking work, So now I have to become responsible. So I do an inventory and I start seeing my role in things. Finally. Yeah, it's been a long time. Because I used to see my role in everything and then I didn't see my role in anything. And now I'm getting back to a more balanced view. So, all right, I do the inventory. I share the stuff. Yeah. And then I start allowing, when I recognize it, I offer it up at power through 6 and 7. Then I write a list at 8 and step 9, I make the amends. I take responsibility for all the toes I stepped on. Yeah. All the stores I robbed. I try to clear all that up. Yeah. So don't tell me this is not responsible. It is. Accountability comes after responsibility. It's not an excuse to be irresponsible. Yeah. It's part of a process. You're completely responsible for shit you have nothing to do with. You become totally irresponsible. Then you become responsible again. And then you become accountable, yeah, for what happened. But now you recognize something was doing a lot of the shit that you thought you were doing. Yeah. And you pin it on where it belongs, on this idea of being self. Yeah. And what happens? Then you really have an intimacy with, hey, I was dancing with a gorilla. I was going to stop when the gorilla wanted to stop. Yes, that's basically the condition. And you can talk to me, well, you've got to be responsible for everything. I'm not going to believe it. That's not my experience. As we say in AA, your experience, strength, and hope. Well, my experience is something fucking took me over. That's my experience. Yeah. And the funny thing is, there was a very personal narration around it, yet I ended up where most alcoholics and addicts end up, institution, jails, and death. How curious that is. Thousands of these uniquely different individual people end up at the three same parking spaces, yes? Maybe they all have a similar driver. Who knows? It seems to make sense to me. Yeah, it does. I mean, obviously. Wait a minute, how did you get here? How did you get here? Well, we were driven by the same fucking thing. But I'm a Ford and you're a Pinto, you're a fucking Toyota. I have nothing fucking to do with you. Well, you sure do, because we are all able to be driven and the same fucking thing drove us all. Yeah. And I just don't, I think it's the elephant in the room of recovery. I do. It's just, how are you gonna you can only rehab self to a certain level, like trying to, do you think there's, like the dog, we have a puppy now. And so, there's gonna be, whatever, disciplining the dog, learning it. There's no cat meetings like that. There's no cat, oh yes, we're gonna discipline the cat. Yeah. The cat just does what it fucking wants to do. It's not, you're not going to teach it much. This is sort of like rehabbing self. It can only go to a certain level, like not ripping your face off every day. Yeah. Or not getting you in a 20-year prison sentence, or not getting fired every week. Yes. All right. The monster has been contained to a certain point, but it's still a monster. Yeah. Like in Zen, they would say it's like trying to put lipstick on a pig or legs on a snake. Yeah. You've got to recognize its nature, and its nature isn't an obedient one. The only thing it respects is a power greater than it. And that's what AA introduces us to, a higher power. Yeah. So yeah, thanks. Great reading.
All right, thank you, Paul. Okay, today we have our first question is from Dan. And Dan, you have a question for Paul today?
Yes, hello. Here, let me start my video again. Hi, my name is Dan. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm glad to be on your meeting, Paul. Thank you for
I lost them a little.
Oh, you're not hearing me?
Now I'm hearing. Yeah.
Let me move. I'm going to move to a different
No, I can hear
place.
you now.
No, we can hear you, mate.
All right, good. Hi. So my question is this. I had two questions, but the first one is, now I'm drawing a blank. Damn it. You spoke the other week about I listen on podcasts, in podcast form usually, and somebody asked you, would you recommend taking an inventory of self? And you said, yeah, that's a good idea. And I lost that podcast. I'm not sure which one it was, and I'm just curious. Could you run that over again? Because it sounded interesting.
Well, I had a little sarcasm in that. That's the whole point.
Oh shit! Right over my head here, man.
Oh, maybe there's a miscellaneous adjunct I could maybe look at and do an inventory on self. Yes, yeah. To me, that's the whole point.
Would that be the cop doing the cop and the thief? Is that what you're talking about here?
No. What I'm talking about is, on 64, they're giving you a theme. People present many of them, but in the book, there's a theme of the inventory that we're going to do, the introductory inventory, which is we're going to look at how self manifested in various ways is what has defeated us. So
it's all self. It's all self.
Yes.
In the inventory.
So yes, the inventory is on self. And so basically on self through looking at its manifestations. So And it's very curious that most of the times in our life, the manifestations of self has been preceded by the word my. Yeah. So what is that implying? The act of being identified as self. I don't see how you can't see that. Yeah. Yeah. So let's say if Stanley has been manifesting through Paul, and for years, every time a manifestation of Stanley came through Paul, Paul called it mine, then I'm identified as Stanley, obviously. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not identified with the manifestation. I'm identified with Stanley. The manifestation is resentment. I'm not identified with that. I'm identified with Stanley. So I'm claiming to be the source or the cause or the one who has the resentment. Well, in fact, my feeling of being under resentment is it has you. I don't have the feeling that I'm just making a casual decision to have a resentment today. It seems to have me. Yeah, the same thing with mental anxiety. It seems to have me. It's not like I have nothing fucking to do today. I'm going to get into some mental anxiety just as a little fun, No, it doesn't seem, this idea of us being the source, the unmovable thing that's being invaded and attacked by outside shit. I don't believe it whatsoever. I think most of the shit that, like it says in the book, we don't have problems. We are the problem. We manufacture our own misery. We manufacture this. Now, I don't believe that. I believe we're the facility that a lot of things can be manufactured in. Yeah. And you can tell by what the facility is manufacturing, you can tell who the CEO is. Yeah. So by looking at the products of self, we get to recognize self. Yeah. Which are the common ones are resentment, fears, and harming other people in the pursuit of what we want. Yeah. We're not just going over it for fun. It ain't fun. We're going over it to recognize what's manifesting in those manifestations. What is it? Is it us or is it self? Because it's a huge, huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and a lot of people that I've met in recovery taught me to look at it as my resentments, my fears, and my harms done to others. That's one of the reasons why we have these talks.
Yeah.
I'm not a believer in that instruction anymore. I'm not going to argue with anybody. Do whatever you want to do, but I'm not a believer in that instruction. I do not believe what I'm going are my resentments. I believe they're manifestations of self in my life. That's a different attitude while you're doing the work. The work needs to be done, but it's how you're doing it, in a sense, is going to produce a result. Yeah.
That makes sense, man.
Yes. Let's say, obviously, there aren't all right, resentment isn't like an endangered species. There's only 30,000 left. They're produced by a perception, a point of view, produces a feeling of, let's say, anxiety about not getting what you want or losing what you have, and then seeing people or things as threats to that. Yeah. And so then there's resentments concerning what happened in the past and all like this. Yeah. Those resentments are coming from a view. Yeah. They're not out there and coming at you. It's how we see something. Yeah.
Right.
And what recovery is saying is something is using the seeing to see resentments. Yeah. Which is self. It's not you. See, this is where the relief lies. The real relief is that it's not you. Not as a way of getting out of it. That doesn't work. See, a lot of people want a replacement for recovery, but it isn't. Do all the steps, do everything, but come to a conclusion that was stated very clearly in the big book. Self is what has defeated us. All right, there you go. You wanted to know what defeated you? There it went. He says it. Yeah. And it was pretty damn important, because it's truly not taking our inventory, it's taking self's inventory. So self is a very is a major aspect, I would say the whole enchilada of the disease. Yeah. So that's why we're doing an inventory on self's manifestations, because obviously, while under the disease, we've got it all mixed up. We think self's manifestations are our manifestations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which only lends to more manifestations by self through us. Obviously.
Yeah, man.
You know, maybe my logic is incredibly flawed, but FLAW, not FLA.
You got the Long Island going on there. Yeah, bro.
People,
Way to go, Paulie.
yeah, exactly. So I got to explain it. But it could be, but the relief has been pretty obvious. Yeah. Once I saw the exact nature of the wrong, a lot of the effects of the solution stabilized to a nice point. Yeah, which is the basis of traveling lighter. Yeah. So I think it has a very, very important thing. So when the person was saying, you think I should do an inventory on self? I thought I saw a little bit of humor in that. Yeah. Yes, that's the whole point. So we're trying to why do you believe, just as a sociological study, why do you believe that a lot of people leave recovery when they hit the fourth step? Yeah, it's like a folklore of AA communities. Yeah, fourth step and the ninth step, fourth step. Why? Why is that? Maybe because the disease doesn't want you to look at your role in things. Why would that be? It seems to want to criticize your role in things all day. It wants to fucking pounce on you in your role of things. It wants to say you're a fucking loser because you're all in things. Why doesn't it want to do an inventory? Because it will be revealed. Yeah. Because the way the inventory is, it isn't like a stream of narrative. It's a fucking inventory. You're gonna look at the unsaleable shit, and you're gonna look at the shit that's working. It doesn't want to have that job review, don't you see? It doesn't. That's why there's usually so much fucking resistance. Yeah, is because if you look at your role in things, you're gonna see self's role in things. It's just gonna become obvious. And if it's not obvious on the individual thing, you'll see the pattern of it. You'll see what self takes to be important, and it may not be what you take to be important. And how do you see that? Because its manifestations are going to be around the topics that it thinks are important. So sort of like when I came in, people said, hey, bro, you got to be willing to save your ass instead of your face. But I thought my face was my ass. I did. My life was trying to save my fucking face, my image. Really, literally, at the expense of my ass, completely. So this is like, that's really, quote unquote, ass backwards. I mean, it's an extreme, you're not gonna, it's not one that you go click, 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 turning very slowly. Yeah, it's sort of like you see it. You recognize, wait a minute, I'm not that. Yeah. After you've done the steps. Yeah. After I made the amends, I made the amends in my life. I went to places I robbed and told them, and I always mentioned recovery. And I said, hey, I stole a lot of shit here. And therefore, that, yeah. I wasn't going to fly to Europe to make an amend. I wasn't that important. I wrote a letter and shit like that. And I saw the patterns of my life. I didn't make an amend for every one night stand that was selfish and inconsiderate. I just made, I saw the pattern of every one night stand. Yeah. And I made sort of an intention not to do that again, sort of like a living amends. Yes. But Yeah, so that's the point. I mean, if you take out that statement, that sentence in the big book, yeah, but it's right there, right before you go into the inventory process. It says, this is the theme, yeah. Being convinced that self manifested in various ways is what has defeated us. We're basically going to take an inventory on self, yeah. And then we'll see our role in it, and we'll see self's role in it, hopefully, yeah. And our role in it isn't as the cause. Our role isn't as the bigger dog, yeah. Our role isn't as the source, the cause, the volitional doer of everything. Our role has been, we've been used for transportation. Something has used us, yes? Something has lived through us and left marks on our life. Yeah. Something took us over and talked to us and led us to fuck it quite a lot. And then we were apt to do almost anything, and many of us have. And many of us have suffered the consequences of those behaviors that we weren't the cause or the source of, yeah? So if you think that nature of that parasite has changed so dramatically because you stop drinking and using, you're fucking off. It's not true. They're not using and they're not drinking provides you an opportunity to recognize what you're fucking not, yeah? So before it defeats you, you can see it getting ready to defeat you, yeah? And when you see it getting ready to defeat you, because you know that that's its nature, no matter how the beginning chorus is, basically the stanza is gonna be you're fucked, so you can recognize it, yeah? You bring that to 6 and 7, or you bring it, hey, what do you do when you're in fear? Ask a higher power to remove it, yes? And so we have a new basis, and that basis is relying on something greater than self. That's the new basis, yeah? So maybe in the beginning, there's an acting on that hope of relying on something greater than yourself, but you will get first you're sincerely into it because you've been fucked and maybe the grace is available, but you get established in it. You get established in reliance on something greater than self. You do. And then those old effects wane, yeah? They lose their import. They don't have the volume. They don't have the ferocity anymore. And the new way becomes your way, yeah? The new way of trusting something infinite is your way now, yes? And instead of being directed by self, you're directed by what? You want to call it love, grace, higher power, the I am, who knows, who cares? But you can tell the fucking difference, can't you? You know the tree by its fruits. Now in my life, resentment is an endangered species. It is. Sometimes it comes across the plane, da 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 da. Yes, but then it usually passes on without any provocation or any, vigilance, and I don't act out on it. Yes, thank God. Now, what has done for me what I couldn't do for myself is blatantly obvious right there and then. Yeah. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome, Paul. Thank you very much. Our next question comes from Bruce. Bruce, you have a question? Let me ask you to unmute there. There you go, Bruce.
Hello, thank you,
Hello.
Bruce Alcoholic. So, this morning I get a call from a guy, he overdosed last night. I got him up in the hospital. And so I talked to him this morning. The first thing he says to me, I don't know why I'm always doing this to myself. I know if I just do enough prayer, meditation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that, maybe I'll be okay. And, I think right there, for myself, that was the problem. I kind of hinged everything on what I was doing, being able to maybe amass enough meditation and prayer. But I did that for years to no avail, until one day I kind of just noticed that what was making up Bruce was made up of these beliefs that were pretty flimsy to believe in. And then, like it says on page 64, self has defeated us. But, when I talk to, it's like, I think you answered it. You said pretty clearly, like, I tell people, you got to stick with the steps, do what suggested in the program, follow it as the best you can. And then, of course, when people over some time, might want to talk about it in a different way, but I get a little, I wonder sometimes, I'm not sure what your experience with this is, but when I start talking about this with people, about what happened with me and how it occurred, it's not really an understanding. It's not, I can explain it in different ways, but for me, it was more of a seeing that occurred. And that, I don't know, it's so hard to talk about that as to, with people, like, I think one of the things that really helped me was realizing that there was absolutely helpless in any way, or even to believe that I'm helpless was just another place to land. And that just kept happening. I kept seeing, places that I would land to try to hold on to, and then it would fall away. And that's not an understanding conceptually, kind of just sort of a seeing. So I was wondering, how might you describe that to people, or talk about? I mean, I know you talk about it all the time, but I mean, with somebody that might be vulnerable in a way.
Well, I think the biggest movement in recovery is surrender. Yeah. And I had no idea what surrender was until it happened with me. And now I know what surrender is. And therefore I can entertain it. So it's turned into surrendered. But I would say most of us have to have that rude awakening that resistance is futile. Yeah, we're outmatched. What we're relying on is not going to get us out of the situation. Yeah, and I don't know how it's gonna. I don't know what the furniture in the room will be like, or the circumstances, but the feeling. It came to me all of a sudden. I was in a trailer park in Northern California. Just pretty much, I had, for the last 10 months, I left a program that I had been in for 2 years, and I had a lot of hope in that program, and I felt better, and I was hoping those people who ran the program were right, that time of being an active addict, an alcoholic, though rather long, was over, and I was going to be sane and somewhat normal. And I had graduated with flying colors, and in a few weeks I was back to where I had been, pitiful, incomprehensibly demoralized by 100, really more, because I had just spent 2 years, went to college, did all this stuff, and none of that resume was enough to keep me from being taken over by the parasite. Seriously. And I ended up really washed up, and after 10 months I was quite hopeless. I would say I wasn't in the state of seemingly hopeless, I was hopeless, and I really basically had given up, and I just was going to try to stay oblivious until I ended up in jail again, or death, or institution. Basically, I just wanted to be, so I was like a sloppy drunk, and I had no money to get drugs. So I just tried to stay intoxicated as much as I could. And then I was in that behavior, and I came out of a blackout, which is, it's a strange experience, because you feel like you're just parachuted behind enemy lines. You come to feeling like you haven't been there, but no one has noticed anything. They have been seeing Paul for the last 12 hours. Paul was talking to them, but Paul has no memory of any of that. So I came to, and I looked at this guy who I was drinking a bottle of vodka with, Royal Cape vodka, and there was a sudden, I just observed that he looked like a fucking bum. And then I felt like he was looking at me like I was a bum. And then suddenly, and I mean suddenly, something happened, like a big hole opened up. And, this information came in almost on a screen. It was like a CNN news flash, no story, just a big headline. And the headline was, "I'm fucked." Now, that was my condition for quite a while. But I had the denial and everything else had kept it from the system. But the system finally had a moment of collapse, which was a surrender. And I realized I was fucked. And the next underlying thing was, and I'm not managerial quality. And that never changed in 30-something years of sobriety. Yeah. That life was over. It had one last hurrah after the lady who I asked to help me came up, and I got in the car. I tried to talk her into getting drugs and shit, and she didn't go for it. And that was like the last loud yell of the alcoholism in my life, basically. 30-something years now. And so I have an intimate sense of extreme possibilities, what can actually happen. That doesn't go by any linear, you got to start small and then go here and go there. It doesn't go that way. I mean, no human power could produce what was produced that day. My mother wanted me to be sober. She knew early in my life that without Paul being sober, nothing went well. Yeah, she knew that. And all she hoped for was me to be sober, because then she knew I'd be somewhat okay. And the state wanted me sober, and that didn't work out. Friends probably wanted me sober. I wanted to fucking stop, but nothing could. Nothing could stop it. Nothing was a strong enough power. Yet something did. And I didn't have a higher power. I recognized a higher power. That's what happened with me. By what happened to me, I recognized the works of a higher power. I knew something had done to me and did for me what I could not do for myself. And it was a period, and there was no debate or review of that. Yeah. So I would say the root awakening is realizing the futility of self, called Paul, trying to get out of self. Yeah. Thank God it had run its race, and I was still alive. Yeah. So I had the great fortune for that fucking thing to be done before I was done, meaning dead. So I've had a whole new life for these last 30-something years, all based on that pivot that occurred in that trailer park. Really, I can't see. That was the genesis of that was like a birth that I was awake to. I don't remember the birth as a baby, but I remember that birth. I remember it. Yeah. I remember it when things changed. It didn't look like the outside had changed, but things had changed. Yeah. And I was born, and then life conspired to bring me to my first meeting that night. Yeah. It was incredible. The woman that came to pick me up, I tried to talk her into getting loaded. And she said, if you want a place to stay tonight, which I did, she says, you got to go to a recovery meeting. So she dropped me off at a men's meeting in San Francisco, and I've been going ever since. So without the way of life, that surrender would have died on the vine in a couple of days. The parasite would have regrouped and taken over the thing, and then ran me more and more into the ground. And you can never imagine how low you'll go. You can't do it justice. You can't have a story of a bottom that does its justice. It's the living of the bottom that's almost indescribable. It is. Yeah. The closest we get to it is incomprehensible, pitiful, demoralization. That's a pretty good statement, but it doesn't do, there's nothing like living it. There's fucking nothing like living it. And Yeah, so I would say most people that open up to the grace of the program is done through surrender. Yeah, I do. Yeah. Then things can come later, but surrendering that, that delusion that if you could only manage better, things would have gone well. Those things, yeah. Those things don't have any weight anymore. You're completely clear that that's all fucked up. And then you have the eyes to see service as a great gift instead of a chore, and commitments as, yeah, and all that. I was so stoked to get into the program of recovery. Couldn't believe it. I was painting houses, and I'd take off for lunch and go to a meeting, and I'd just be so fucking happy that, the glory days were over. Yeah. I don't see that, even though that demonstration isn't happening every day, that which was demonstrated is happening all the time. Yeah. That which demonstrated through that demonstration is always available at all times. Yeah. And thank God my life now is a miracle. It doesn't need so many miracles anymore. It is a miracle. Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to recognize if your life is if the basis of your life is a miracle. Usually you recognize something has a huge contrast. So I'm in a life of a miracle. So a lot of miracles aren't happening anymore. There's no need for them. Hallelujah. So, yes. So I don't know about talking to others. I think what you are at the moment, which is a conduit of grace, speaks louder than what you'll ever say. So, yeah. Yeah. And maybe you'll be used to help someone get sober. Maybe you'll be used not to help someone get sober, but to stay sober. Somehow it's going to be put to use. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Paul. Our next question comes from James Lebowski. James, come on in, ask your question.
Hey, thanks so much. I don't know how well formulated a question I have, but it's just such an honor to have a chance to talk directly to Paul. I want to make sure I get a chance to whenever possible.
I want you to call my girlfriend up and say that. It's such an honor to call the Paul. I don't think she's going along with that. But yeah, thank you.
Well, it's all I can say is that, like, compared to how I traveled 5 years ago, I guess maybe when I encountered your videos versus now is so different. But one of the things I do now too is I work with guys and get out of self that way too. And you said something the other day, and I repeated it. I don't think I really was. I think I was a poor man's Paul, but it had to do with the fact that somebody was talking about how their feelings, and that's always a really hard thing to talk about because no one really knows what they are, which I think you sort of dispensed with. And where you brought it to was the action figure place. Does the action figure want to deal with the thoughts and the feelings that may be uncomfortable, or does he want to take the action and drink and use over the thoughts and feelings and then have the consequences, which are way more uncomfortable than just dealing with the thoughts and the feelings? And it was just such a where this guy's at, it's such a powerful thing to transmit to him that I wanted to ask you about that again.
Well, recovery is, for many of us, is growing up finally. Yeah. We were in like a long-term temper tantrum, basically. And we didn't, one of the greatest statements in recovery for me was, fitting yourself around circumstances instead of trying to fit them around you. That is basically, that's a huge one in my experience. Yeah. And these aren't things we can do. These are things we can express after the program and the grace of the program works on us. Yeah. That we'll observe that we've been fitting ourselves around circumstances instead of trying to fit them around me. Yeah. And all of these statements, I mean, you can have an intimate feeling about 20 things on a single page of the book. You know, the descriptions of the problem and the descriptions of the effects of the solution. I'm completely intimate with all of them, which is awesome. Yeah. So, and just before, remember, the message isn't Paul. Paul isn't the message. Paul is just the character, and something can come through that Paul listens to, hopefully as much as you're listening to it. Yeah. I listen in a different way because it's a feeling. But yeah, we're just a bunch of hoses trying to figure out our role concerning the water. Well, you don't have a dominant role. Yeah. You're better off being directed instead of directing. Yeah. Yeah. Seeing yourself as an expression instead of a cause and stuff like that. Yeah. So, yeah, bro, I always like to hear from you, James. And I don't know if I talk to it directly, but yeah. The thing is, see, that there's feelings come up, and then there's a seeing of the feelings, and then there's a mental reaction to the feelings. And the mental reaction, the mental state has no fucking idea what an emotion is. It doesn't have a freaking clue. So when sometimes there's an excitement, and then the head will say you're super nervous. Yeah. It's insane. It's had 60 years of reacting to emotion, and it has absolutely no fucking wisdom concerning any of them. Really. I mean, it just makes up a name, you know? So it hasn't, it's totally inept in that job. So basically it wants to, in my case, it wanted to mute emotions. It wanted to disassociate from emotions, and it wanted me to stay loaded and produce a manufactured emotion or a feeling, so that anytime any other emotion or feeling would arrive, it would have to go to the previous place feeling of being loaded all day. Yes? So I was trying not to feel a fucking thing in this life, tell you the truth. And I had a weird sense of control because I could make myself feel something by shooting coke or drinking. Yeah. And therefore, a feeling that you were bringing to me, I'd have an immunity to, because I was already encased in a feeling of terminal uniqueness, of being fucking displaced or disassociated. Yeah. This is a failed system's reaction to something it has no fucking idea of, which is the emotional life. You can see it by the evidence. Yes? Look at sometimes its reaction when there's a feeling of love. It gets super suspicious and paranoid, and it wants to put up some defenses immediately. Yeah, it's incredible. See, what you don't realize, its idea of a threat, you may not see as a threat. Yeah, it doesn't. It's running the compound, so to speak. It's sort of like we used to have the story of, well, when I was young, I was afraid, so I got a dog to protect me. Yeah. So that dog protected me, protected my house. And then after a while, the dog was biting people who I wanted to come over, you know? people who I wanted to have time with, it would bark away. And then it turned on me and started biting my own ass and fucking barking at me all day. So now the thing that I got for protection has gone fucking crazy. And now I'm captured. I'm imprisoned in its house. Yeah. And it tells me when I can go out. Yeah. This is what's happened. When I was young, things happened to me and they really scared me. And then the mental state got very amplified and developed and told me it was going to take care of me. And it didn't really inform me of what the cost was going to be, but the cost was monumental. Yeah. For you not to have these feelings, you're not going to feel fucking anything. Yeah. You're going to end up in a condition we talk about in the big book, incapable of having a viable relationship with another person. We didn't start there. We ended up there by relying on something that's a failed system. Its solution to that is not to have any relationship. Yeah. Just be completely absorbed in you. No empathy, no compassion. Fuck them. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how we can't see self by its manifestations. We talk about it with Helen that time. If you have the potential to reach 8 feet, but you can only reach 4 feet with this fucking mental suit you're wearing. Yeah. And what happens is we tolerate that, and now we live in a world of 4 feet. Yeah. And what does it do? It shrinks the world even more. 3 feet, 2 feet. Yeah. You don't think you're going to want to get a momentary relief? You know it's not a fucking good idea to get loaded, but you'll get loaded. Yeah? Because the only ideas you're listening to are the fucking problems ideas. And it's telling you, you're fucked. It's never going to get better. They're all out to get you. So let's get loaded. Yeah? Once the genie's out of the bottle, then you're picking up tattoos out here. Hopefully just henna tattoos, but some are ink. You know, you may get a 30 prison year sentence or get run over by a car that changes your physical life the rest of your life. Yeah, these things happen. Yeah. You better see, you want to see the source of the problem, where the problem resides. You want to see it in the mental blueprint room. You do not want to get out of a 20-year mortgage in a mental house that you believe you're the resident of. You've got to see it getting built and bring it to 6 and 7. It wants you to live on a consequential level. You'll know you're fucked way after you've been fucked for quite a while. That doesn't work. Yeah. We're out to lunch. Can you believe that you're in a whole day and you have to wait till 8 p.m. for the head to tell you it was a bad day? Wouldn't you know it was bad when it was bad? I'm not pointing these out. I'm pointing these out because they point to something else. What has caused us to be out to lunch? That's a mental solution. It's not up for the task of living at a day at a time, so it just goes out to lunch. Just says, fuck it. Its ideas of living life on life's terms is a mental fucking life. It's an interpretation. Yeah. I knew who I was. I knew who I'm gonna be. I know who I am. Nothing's ever gonna change. It's all gonna be fucked. And why the fuck should I do anything? That's not you talking. You're listening to a radio station. You are. The freedom from self is recognizing you're not that. It can't be any other way. All the other freedoms is as self, which aren't freedoms. The freedom from self is recognizing you're not the thinker of all those fucking thoughts. Recognizing you weren't the doer of all those actions while you were loaded. Yeah. when it hit me, I swear, I saw self as other, clear as day. Reading that book, page 64, as soon as I saw it as other, a possibility that was too far out of my reach became readily available. I can be free from it. Yeah. I can't be free from a virus if I keep calling myself the fucking virus. I'm going to try to be free as the virus. Yes. And it's not in the nature of the virus to be free from the virus. It's not. Yeah. Self can't get out of self. Is that what I've been doing? Not what I've been doing. Is that what's been done? Have I seen that? Like we went over this the other day. There's a huge difference of recognizing self-centeredness and saying that you're self-centered. It's a huge difference. Yeah. It's huge. So I recognize that the basic format of this action figure is self-centeredness. It's working GPS. Yeah. There's a seeing of that. But there's also a seeing is that I'm not self-centered. Yeah. But the language never leads you there. As soon as there's a recognition of self-centeredness, it places you as the one who's self-centered. And then it turns to self-centeredness as something that you've been fucking doing. Yeah. And then beats the living shit out of you. For why are you being so self-centered? You're not. There's self-centeredness being self-centeredness. Where are you in it? You're complying with the fucking story. You're going along with it. You keep playing the character it's implying. And it's worn out. It's old. It's over. You know, it comes to a point when you've worn something and it's just worn out, like shirts, t-shirts. They lose any semblance of any form. You've worn them and it's time to fucking use them for a rag or something. Yeah, it is. Well, Jesus Christ. The new attitude and the new outlook isn't a rehab of the old attitude and an old outlook. It's a completely new attitude and outlook. In other words, recognizing there's no rehabbing the old attitude and old outlook. Yeah, it's too old of a dog. It's not going to learn any new tricks. You might as well get off the dead horse. Or you'll have to have a huge story to compensate for not moving fucking at all, of doing so many things, but you're really not moving fucking anywhere. You're stuck on a dead horse. But I'm in Brazil stuck on a dead horse, or I'm bungee jumping stuck on a dead horse, or I just took a 50-foot wave stuck on a dead horse. Yeah. So I'll look like I'm not stuck all fucking day, being stuck the whole day. Yeah. There's some people that have never left the temple grounds. They take the same walk every day, and it's a new walk every day because their mind is free. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing tons of shit, but I'll tell you something, you can be free without doing anything because that's your inherent condition. There's no limitation in seeing. You don't have like, oh, you only have 800,000 seeing possibilities. No, you don't. Yeah. As long as the body's alive, you're seeing. Yeah. You close your eyes, you're still seeing. You're seeing shit that's on the eyeball. You're seeing the lids. You're seeing, yes. The seeing doesn't go to sleep. That which is hearing doesn't go to sleep. Yeah. Awareness is alive without any opposite. It didn't become alive and it's going to die. It just is. Yeah. It's a completely different ball of wax than we are as this little coming and going action figure. How are we going to understand that? We're not. Do I want a higher power of this understanding? Of course not. I want a higher power of its own understanding. Yeah, because then it's going to be quite revelatory as it breaks through this understanding. Because this understanding is so fucking small. It can't help itself. It's something so small that wants to think it's so big, but it's small. Yeah. Perhaps there is a better way. No, there is a better way. And what is that way? The way of trusting the infinite rather than finite self. Yeah. Let's just have an honest appraisal where we're at on that spectrum. Yeah. And just tell the truth. Most of the truth telling isn't about the infinite. It's about the finite self. Truly. Yeah. It didn't say, oh, we're going to take an inventory on the infinite. No, we're taking an inventory on finite self. Why? Why is that? Because that seems to be the delusionary quality. That seems to be the obscuring. That seems to be the agitation based on no agitation other than itself. Just agitated, agitated, agitated. Yeah. You think that agitation is going to stop? Of course not. All it does is beget more agitation. Look at people. Our head is completely inoculated with an idea of time. So let's say you're sitting here and peace comes over you. What's the head's reaction to it? Well, I probably won't be feeling like this tomorrow. There you go. There goes the peace. You're going to train that? You're going to make that do new tricks? Give me a break. Recognize it for what it is and what it isn't. It isn't you. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. James.
Awesome, Paul. Thank you. Our next and last question comes from Vicky. Vicky, you have a question. Let's see. Get you unmuted. There you go.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm an alcoholic. Thank
Vicky?
you very much. Thank you, Paul. I've been listening to your videos. It's hard for me to understand, to be honest. So I might ask something very ABC. But the way I understand what you say is like an analogy, like being possessed in a way, just to,
Yeah.
we've seen, there's a reference. And so find a way to kick that thing away. And so this is the self. And what am I? Like, because you said the self, you're not the self. The self is not us. Who are we?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, why don't you find that out?
So there is something. It's not that I'm trying to understand.
I'm not saying there is or there ain't, but that's your journey.
Okay.
Who would want to spoil that? That's the fun of it. Who would want to give you an idea when an idea is of the old way? Find out. Yeah.
So my question is, from what you're saying, we're like media empty or media with something?
I'm not going to answer you. Find out.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
That the thing that wants to know isn't you. I'm sure of that. So the thing that wants to know, wants to have assurance, is that which is super agitated. It's not of you. Yeah. Hopefully, we start learning to trust by being taken care of. So if you're in the program for a while, you'll realize, hey, you're being taken care of, and other people, their whole life is based on recovery. They are. They've met their wife, their job, everything. It's unbelievable what can happen. So now, you know, you were captured by a lot of anxiety, agitation, and now it starts dissipating just based on externals changing. Just like my mom, you know, my mom, as she got older, she was in a wheelchair, but she wanted to live by herself, and she had a little apartment, and she would pass out in the wheelchair, and then she couldn't move and couldn't get to the phone or anything like that. So it was time to put her in, and so she was afraid. She couldn't get to the food and everything like that. Yeah, she was very anxious, afraid. So we put her into a home, yeah, and in that home, and she was afraid when she went in there, but over time, quickly, you know, they brought her breakfast, they brought her lunch, they brought her dinner. If she buzzed this buzzer, someone actually came, yeah. Now her head didn't have a huge investment in being afraid. She was able to learn that there was no need to be afraid anymore quickly. She was, yeah. So after a week or two, she was back to her old self in a sense, because she was in good hands, yeah. She was in good hands, yeah. Now, if you're in good hands for a while and you're still totally fucked up and agitated, there's a bias going on, yeah. There's something that's resisting recognizing things have changed. That is not of you. That is not of you, yes? If you go against all evidence and believe you're fucked, you're in a fantasy world. You are. And that mental fantasy is, the lord of that mental fantasy is self, so to speak, yes? And there's no God there, none. There's no God but self. Yeah. So if you see that you're not responding to being sober and that life is chilling out and you're still super flipped out all the time, the devotion to self is still apparent, yeah. So that's a very cool thing to see. So you can go back to step 1 and step 2 and step 3, yeah. And maybe it's time to take an inventory based on the theme of looking at self's manifestations in your life. So you start being able to recognize what's you, Vicky, and what's not you, yeah. What's you and what's not you. Most of us it's very unclear. We're calling a lot of shit that's not us, and we've forgotten us. we have, and we look just like every other, we act, and you can see an addict and an alcoholic from across the room if you're an addict and alcoholic, because none of their individual tendencies are shining too brightly. The same old, you can recognize a wolf being a wolf yourself, yeah? So, yeah, just find out, yeah? Just follow. This is where keeping it simple is. Keeping it simple, I don't believe a lot of the ways people talk about it. Keeping it simple is sort of like realizing life has brought you to an operating table, yeah? Don't get up, don't play doctor, yeah? And things will work out well, yeah? So keep it simple with why, how does this work? That's where to keep it simple. Just fucking be happy it's working, yeah? Yeah, because that which wants to know isn't, that which wants to know is the basis of the statement, self-knowledge avails us nothing, yeah? That which wants to know is selfing, and selfing, having any knowledge about anything, avails us fucking nothing. So, yeah. So let's keep it simple, definitely concerning the effects of the program. It just works. That's the miracle of it, yeah? Because the book, the program of recovery, didn't call Paul, it called alcoholism. alcoholism was brought to the program, maybe, you know, and the program worked on alcoholism, and it diminished the mental state, so other aspects of what you call Paul could shine through, yeah, instead of being constantly obscured as if they didn't even exist, are now shining through. And when they shine through, you recognize the source, and the source is not of coming and going, yeah. The source is always available at all times, right where we are, with no requirement necessary to meet it, yeah. It is the epitome of reliability. It is the epitome of reliability. Yeah. I remember when I woke up after getting run over by the car, the selfing was nowhere to be found. It was completely unreliable. This is over my pay scale. And then it sort of hovered around me for a while, and then would drop some bombs every once in a while. But man, it wasn't going to land. Fuck, no way. Yeah, but spirit was in every fucking breath. Yes. I saw it so distinctly, man. There was something on, there was physical condition, and then there was this mental fucking ephemeral, very flighty little piece of Kleenex, super seen through, yeah? And it was so foreign to what was going on when usually it was right there, yeah? And then the only thing that could be relied on was what was reliable, which was spirit, yeah? And no TV, nothing. There was no way to distract, just there, 24/7. I couldn't even move my head. Both legs were in traction. I just there. Yeah. So you don't want to get to that point where you'll see what's real and what ain't. When I got run over, you know, this one time I was surfing, I hit my head on the bottom, and I had a concussion in Australia years and years ago. So I triggered, my nervous system stopped. Yeah. Luckily I landed on my back and I couldn't move. I never had that experience. There was no moving the limbs by the head. And so they took me out of the water. There was no thought at all for a while. Everything was framed in gold. It was like a bright light. They got me on a longboard, brought me into the beach. They start cutting off the wetsuit, and then the thought system appeared. It'd been gone for about 4 minutes. And the first thing it said was, I can't afford the ambulance. That's what it said. Just leave me here and die. Leave Paul to die. Yeah, I can't afford the ambulance. Can you imagine that? It was incredible. When it's always there, you don't recognize its fucking nature. When you watch it come, you see the smallness of it all. It had no concern about the physical health. It was worried about money. Unbelievable. Watch when you're riding a bike, especially if it's expensive. If you start falling off the cliff, what gets saved? The fucking bike. You'll go off the cliff, but I don't want to. That's $2,000 bike. The head sees more value in the bike than you. Yeah, keep on relying on it. See how it goes. I had once, I dropped some acid. I was young, and we were going to go to a Rod Stewart concert, which we never made. But my head, I remember it so distinctly. I'm totally flying, and then the head tells me, why don't you take 10 downs, which would probably kill me. And I realized something very clearly that day. The greatest instinct is self-preservation, but the self-preservation isn't about preserving you. It's about preserving self. Yeah, I would have died with 10 downs, but it just casually said, oh yeah, eat 10 downs. Yeah, it had no interest in preserving the body. It was preserving its fucking self. why do we keep going back to it? It's like somebody who you trusted completely and you find out was fucking you for years. Yeah, you're going to have a rude awakening. We're way past a rude awakening with this thing. I mean, it's incredible. Don't fuck this up. It fucks it up, you know? I know the people, this one time, people knew me and knew what I was doing. So this guy and this woman were getting married and they wanted me to come to the wedding. So the groom took me to the side and said, Paul, please do not shoot cocaine. Don't do any drugs, at least until the ceremony's over. So I promised him I would, and an hour later I was in the bathroom shooting coke. Yeah. Give me a break. How many times do you need to see there's something foreign in us that's using us for transportation and for a form of
I think you muted your, oh, yeah, you muted yourself.
that was my higher power. I got to take the call. All right.
Okay. Well, yeah, that was our last question, Paul. So I think
that's great.
Successfully. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, don't cut open the wetsuit.
Eh?
I thought you were going to say, don't cut open the wetsuit.
That surprised me. No.
Yeah, that's good.
But it's amazing because the brain got such a whack, the selfing got stopped. Yeah. I could have been an eggplant for all I knew. Yeah. And then it regrouped, and then its first presentation was, die here. You can't afford the ambulance. Oh, my great friend, come in. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Let me say goodbye to one.
Hey, Paul, before you say goodbye, do you want to just make an announcement about the retreat that's coming up?
No, but we're going to do a thing for a different group on February 20th and 21st. It's on the website. It's going to be like something I swore I'd never do, but I'm getting out of that statement by having it a virtual. So it's going to be 3 talks for 2 days, 3 talks each, and then question and answers. And, you know, there will be a momentum builds, and there's, yeah, different things happen. So you use time to dream yourself out of time. So yeah, we're going to be doing that 21st. I think the charge is $100. I get some of it to support my lavish lifestyle. And yeah, there you go. And then we have the regular talks. And we're going to have a new talk coming up soon too that will happen on Tuesday morning before the recovery talk. It'll be a non-duality talk from like 9 to 10, and then we'll do the 10:30 recovery talk. That's not up yet, but it's going to happen with this group. This group, yeah. They're based in Toronto, and I did a thing called a Nothing Conference with them. So they wanted me to try this stuff, and if it doesn't work, we won't do it. So, yeah. I think they have a larger expectation of how popular I am than I do. But who knows? We'll find out. All right. So let me say, is that enough? Yeah, that's good. All right. We got Michael. I did a great job, Michael. Thanks for that reading. Kaiser, as always. Very good to see you. Ann, as always.
Happy birthday, Paul.
We got Steve. Nice to see you, Steve. We got Michael Z. Great. We got let's see. Fatina. Fatina's got the nice thing on, whatever. Bruce Lancer. Bruce L. Nice to see you, Bruce. We got Paul, my friend Paul. How are you, Paul? Rob Farr from the UK, as always. Rob, you're never that far to me, so it's always a pleasure. We got Kevin. He's not there, but and Walter from the Netherlands. Nice to see you, Walter. Some other
Hey, Paul.
Dutch people are coming. Yeah.
Really?
Yes, they
Really?
have. Yeah, I told them about you. Yeah.
I have to
So
take
we
care
got-
about my reputation.
Maiko, nice to see you. Phoenix is now in Hawaii. Woo. That's a nice move. We got Mika. Mika is from the Nordic countries. Yeah. Finland, eh? Finland, yeah.